Welcome back, folks. I've got to tell you a little bit of something here before we get started. We're experimenting. We're trying to see how we can deliver the message that we deliver to the maximum number of people. So on Mondays and Tuesdays, we're basically doing two shows, two half-hour shows, as opposed to an hour-long show. And then on Friday, we're coming back in and we're doing a review because some people tell us they absolutely love the slides. Others say they'd rather just have the information and not have the slides. So the Friday review is going to be a little high level. If you really, really like it and didn't see the first part, then go back and watch what we did earlier in the week. But basically, there's not going to be any slides today. I'm going to be looking over my computer occasionally so that I keep in the same sequence that we had at the beginning of the week. But this is a sort of high-level overview of what we did Monday and Tuesday, and just a little hint of what we're going to be doing hopefully next week. So with that, I'm going to get started. So there are people out there that are saying, oh my goodness gracious, America is done. There's historians that say, oh, America is following the path that every other great nation has fallen. There's 7 steps that clearly show that a nation is ready to basically collapse, and America's already on stage 5. Folks, this is not those days. Everything has changed. All those probably thousands of years of history, here's what happened. A great nation began to slip, and neighbors saw that they had weaknesses, they attacked them, and the next thing you know, the neighbor was the new superpower. That's not what's going on right now. Matter of fact, what's happening is something that's orchestrated by God. There's a great reset, but it's not the great reset the global financial elite wanted. It's the great reset that's going to take them down. And there's only one nation in the world that is queued up by God and that is capable of being the superpower of the world. Now, we're not going to be the sole superpower like we have been for the last 250 years, but we're going to come out of this reset being not the sole reserve currency, but the dominant reserve currency, and not the absolute most powerful naval force in the world, but pretty much able to take on anybody we need to take on. Let's just put it that way. So at any rate, here's what's going on. Basically, instead of one nation falling and another nation taking over, America is morphing into a new role, a role where it's the leader of the world, but it's not the dominant government of the world. And that's a big difference. So basically what's going to happen is every nation in the world right now, this is why the scenario is different, is an economic free fall. Russia's in trouble financially, Japan's in trouble, and Britain's in trouble, France is in trouble, Germany's in trouble, China's in trouble, and America's in trouble. But if you've been following what I've been doing, you'll know that Donald Trump has a plan to see America come through this and not have a devastating collapse. There will be a collapse. It has to happen. We have to collapse the financial system in order to take control with the global financial elite. They say who controls money controls the world. So we have to collapse the system in order that we can set up the new system. Donald Trump, in my opinion, has been ordained by God to orchestrate what I call a soft bankruptcy. He's gone through 6 personal bankruptcies, so who better to oversee the United States and create a soft bankruptcy that will be sharp decline, followed by an almost immediate uptick where we come back and we're strong as we ever were. Matter of fact, stronger than we ever were. And it's going to be just like Donald Trump said, America is going to be strong again. It's going to be greater than it's ever been. It's going to be respected. And it's the only nation in the world that the rest of the world will gleefully accept as the leader of the world. Let's go on down, and I'm going to take you into the real essence of what we talked about at the beginning of the week. So think about this for a second. Put your thinking caps on and pay attention. The things that I'm going to read off, I'm looking over the slide here in a second, are things that you have to have if you're going to be the leader of the world. If you fail to check one of the boxes that I'm going to read off, then you're not capable of being the leader of the world. So you have to have a free society that nations can trust. That's not China. That's not Russia. The only nation that fits that bill is the United States of America. You have to have abundant and diverse resources. Well, we've allowed our grip on on those resources to slip over the last 3 or 4 presidents, but Donald Trump is coming back and systematically signing mineral deals for rare earth, for oil, for all kinds of things, so that we will have those natural resources so that we can reclaim our control over manufacturing. And so our dollar can once again be valuable and be respected. Remember, they say that basically he who controls money controls the world, but people don't think through it. Where does the money come from? It's not because somebody says, hey, this dollar bill, this fiat bill is worth something. No, in the system that we're going into, we're going to go into a system that's not based upon just saying the dollar has value. It's based on backing the dollar by gold, by silver, by wheat, by oil, by uranium, by every kind of commodity you can possibly imagine. Going on down the list of requirements, a diverse and innovative economy. And so America is all over the world. We've got tentacles everywhere. And we will be the manufacturing superpower of the world. Again, everything is leaving China in terms of manufacturing. It's not all coming here, but enough is coming here that we will move up to once again be the #1 manufacturing power in the world. Leadership in manufacturing and trade is essential. And then you've got energy and food independence. No nation has ever been the leader of the world unless it could feed its people. So it has to have energy, and it has to have, I mean, basically, this is going to sound crazy, but the geography upon which a nation sets to a large degree determines whether it will be a superpower. And America is uniquely positioned. We have all kinds of natural resources. We're over here in the Pacific Ocean, thousands of miles away from all the chaos over in Europe and over in the Middle East. And America is just exactly where God wanted. God chose this nation, and he chose to put us here on the most productive piece of geography in the entire world, in the ideal location. Energy, food independence going on down. Demographics as it relates to GDP. What's that mean? It means that several of the nations that would be competing against us in this new economy have very, very old, aging populations, Japan and China in particular. America has a relatively young, productive force. When you get to a situation where the majority of your people, like in China now, are at retirement age, that has a huge impact on the vitality of the nation. And going on down, we're almost done with these requirements. Global language and global reach. America is the only Navy in the world that truly has a global reach. And we've never had a superpower that didn't have a dominant language. America, according to the UN, is the language of the world. And finally, strong military. You have to defend your territory. You have to defend your trade routes. And America is uniquely positioned to do that. I know there's people out there saying, oh, China has this huge Navy. Yeah, but a lot of their vessels are diesel and they don't have the range to get here. We still have technological superiority, even though China may have a numerical superiority in certain areas. I'm taking down into another aspect of what's going on, and that is something that I think these two things I'm talking about right now are the most important things you need to understand. The requirements to be a great nation, and then this next part is requirements for peace and prosperity. It was Eisenhower who said, is there any man, is there any woman, is there any child that doesn't understand that just got my tongue stuck on the roof of my mouth, that financial inequality is the principal cause of war around the world. So here's what you have to have peace and prosperity. You have to have a sovereign currency, meaning that the US dollar is only worth about 2 cents right now. So we have to go back to a commodity-backed system. You have to have sovereign borders. So to sum this part up, any nation that doesn't have sovereign currencies, not sovereign. Any nation that doesn't have a sovereign border, meaning a closed border, is not sovereign. Any nation, absolutely, that does not have honest elections is not sovereign. Any nation that doesn't have resource independence is not sovereign. Any nation that doesn't have energy independence is not sovereign. Any nation that doesn't have significant manufacturing prowess is not going to be the principal leading force in the world. In any industry, that any country that doesn't have an equitable trade agreement that does was see them make money, not lose money, is going to fall consistently until they collapse. Donald Trump has changed that. He's taken us off of the losing trade agreements that we were on. When we started trading with China, we were 200 years old. We only had a $660 billion national debt. Now, through war, through unfunded entitlements, and through losing trade, we have a $38 trillion national debt. But if you've been following, you know that Trump is orchestrating a way to pay off our national debt and to basically grow this economy out of the situation it's in and put us in a position where the whole world will accept us as the leader of the world. And going on down, you have to have global financial parity, which is what we talked about a minute ago. Every nation in the world, Trump's been talking about this, has to have their currencies at relatively the same value. They all have to have access to their natural resources. They all have to be able to feed their people. They all have to be able to have a reasonable manufacturing base. When all that happens, peace is the outcome. And what's Trump been doing? He's been setting up the stage for that, and he's been going all around the world. He's negotiated 6 peace agreements. And by the way, most of those peace agreements had hooks in them that gave us additional natural resources. And if the Middle East agreement holds, at 7, only leaving one major conflict, which is, of course, the Ukraine and Russian conflict, which I believe will eventually be settled. It's turning out to be a lot harder than he thought, but that's okay. And then here's maybe the most important of all. You have to have shared values, and the global financial elite have done everything they can to divide us. And the Bible says a nation divided cannot stand. And so basically, what we need to understand is that they're trying to divide us, and they're using money to divide us. In other words, if I have money and you don't, then they're going to pit those who do against those who don't, etc. And they're using immigration. Immigration, you need to understand, is probably the biggest threat we have right now. And what you also need to understand is you cannot separate the issue of illegal immigration and election integrity. They are intricately tied together. So we have to see those two almost as one. So what's happening? Immigration is a Trojan horse. Since COVID, they've sent between 10 million and 20 million people into this country to do what? To economically collapse us from within. That's one thing. To usurp our election process, which we'll get into in a minute in detail. That's 2. And to basically create absolute division and chaos within this nation, weakening us from the inside, so that hopefully our enemies can attack us from the outside. The only hope they have of taking down America is if they can weaken us from the inside, then attack us from the outside. And even then, I think it would take more than one nation. It's not going to happen because the people who would attack us are right now in no position to attack us. They have their own issues going on. America, I absolutely believe, is going to come out of this and be the leader of the world. Let's go on down, and I'll break this down a little bit further for you. I want to try to give you some solutions. So the issues that they say are so difficult are always easy. So if we want to solve the border crisis, here's what we have to do. It's just so simple. No entitlements. Don't give them any money, and they won't be able to support themselves, and they'll deport. And so what's a lot of these illegal immigrants doing? They're going home. They're self-deporting. And then no access to public schools. If they can't give their kids an education, that's another reason to go home. No access to medical services. We're not an inhumane nation. We'll treat people if they come in an emergency room and have a real crisis. But what we should do is have ICE there to deport them, because they, after all, have broken our laws and they're here illegally, and they're trying to basically, who knows what kind of mischief they're doing. Certainly they're a financial burden on us, and the number of those people who have come in illegally were brought here or sent here by nations that are not friendly to the United States. And I think we're about to see over the next month or two that we have sleeper cells in this nation that are going to be activated. And I hate to say it, and I think we're going to have riots around the country. Trump is preparing for it. That's why he's putting the National Guard out. That's why he's basically preparing, if he needs to declare martial law. But I think we're going to have chaos in the streets of America. It's got to happen because we have to get these people here who are here to basically take this nation down. We have to get them out. There's no other way. And if we don't give them a driver's license, that's another way to get them out. And then I have my own individual little solution where I say that all we have to do is just put a G on their driver's license for grandfather. And what am I talking about? I basically contend that for over 30 or 40 years, we invited these people in and let them come and let them work in our agriculture field and work in our hotels. And basically, they were convenient. Well, we can't just kick those people out because now they've had children and they're here. So we need to protect the dreamers. We shouldn't give citizenship or voting rights to the parents who came here illegally. But I do believe we should give citizenship rights to their children, just like after the Civil War, we passed the 14th Amendment. And what was that for? That was to give citizenship rights to the newly freed slaves. So my suggestion is, if we put that G on the driver's license, it denotes the fact that you were here before 2019 and that you were grandfathered in and are not going to be deported. But if you came in after 2019, then you don't get a G in your driver's license and you're subject to deportation if you're stopped for any reason whatsoever. So let's go on down and we're going to break this down a little deeper. So we're now going to be talking about elections. And they steal our elections before we ever go to the poll to vote. People have no earthly idea what they do. So I want to give you just a few highlights. Now, all we're talking about here is highlights. There are over a half a dozen different election fraud cases that are showing up in the news right now. Whistleblowers are coming out from the woodwork. So I'm going to start with something that we need to recognize and we need to change, and that's that our votes are basically neutered before we ever go to the poll. So this is from the last election. 100 families, 100 of the wealthiest families in the world in the last election, donated $2.6 billion. The total amount spent was $5.5 billion. What's that mean? That means these people donated that money in order to get power and to get influence. And it means that almost always, no matter who's elected, they are influenced by powerful people who are asking for special interest, for special consideration. And those special considerations never, ever represent the best interests of the people of the United States of America. Another scandal that's been released recently is all the fraud that's happening in the Social Security Department, all the dead people that are registered in the Social Security Department. And then something really heinous. I can't understand why this woman isn't already in jail. Michelle King, she was the interim director of Social Security, and she was assigned the task to change the computer in the Social Security Department so that any illegal immigrant who asked for a Social Security card was given it. Whoa. What does that mean? That means they have the same rights as you do. That means they can get entitlements of every kind. They can get food stamps. They can get every kind of assistance you can imagine. They can get Social Security. And most importantly, with that designation, having a Social Security card, they're legally voters. They have every single right you have. And just ask yourself a question. Who are they going to vote for? Are they going to look at this election and are they going to even consider a Republican? No, they're going to vote for a Democrat 99.999% of the time because that's their bread ticket. And so basically that's another way we lose our election before we ever get to the polls. So we got billionaires that are influencing the election, and we've got corrupt politicians that are giving Social Security cards to illegal immigrants so that they will vote Democrat. There's more going on. This next thing I'm going to talk about is so simple. People didn't even look at it, didn't even think about it. It was a simple question that Trump wanted to ask in his first term. We have to have a census every 10 years. Well, it's not quite the way people think. We don't have to have a census every 10 years. We have to have a census within every 10-year period. So when the last census came up, Trump wanted to ask a simple question. Are you a U.S. citizen? And that is more important than you can possibly imagine. Why? Because it determines really another very important fact about, do we have an honest election? Do we have an honest government? Here's what happens. If we don't have that, and by the way, Trump is trying to do another census that's going to be done early, hopefully before the 26 midterms. So here's what's happening. If he gets that question on the ballot, it's going to change everything. It's going to give the Republicans a more even playing field. Here's what happens if you count every person, not just every citizen. If you count every person, it gives sanctuary cities and sanctuary states more headcount, which means they get more federal funding, which means they get more representation in Washington, which means they get more representatives in Congress. I mean, people just don't dig down. They don't understand that we haven't had an honest election in over 100 years. Now, I'm an historian. God told me that part of my message has to be based on history. So I'm going to take you back to McKinley. And McKinley was the first president that they bought. There was a candidacy between William Jennings Bryan and between McKinley. And McKinley wanted to get rid of all the robber barons. And so the three wealthiest men in the country said, oh my God, if we don't, I'm sorry, I just said that backwards. Let me go back. William Jennings Bryan wanted to get rid of the robber barons, and McKinley was for big business. So the three most powerful men in the country, Carnegie, J.P. Morgan, and Rockefeller, got together, put all their money behind McKinley and all their power and all their influence, and they got him elected. And they had an aha moment. Well, if we can elect a president, we can elect a congressman, a senator, a governor, a mayor. We can put judges in. We can control all the spheres of influence, and we can basically puppet the government from the shadows. So if you really know your history and you go back, you understand that it's not just about what's happening in Venezuela right now. It's just not what happened with Smartmatic in Venezuela, where now we know that the 2020 election was stolen along with that of 71 other nations. But we now understand that, at least in the United States, we haven't had an honest election since McKinley, which is over 100 years ago. So let's go on down, and we're going to come into some really important things that, again, people don't understand. You cannot have a strong economy unless you have resource independence. So this is where you need to understand what the definition of money is. Money is not what we think it is. It doesn't just pop up and it's growing on a tree. Money basically is created through a process. You have natural resources, God's natural resources, coal, oil, wheat, water, everything. That's the basis of all economies, whether people realize it or not. That's basically then manufactured into finished goods and sold through trade markets all over the world. At the moment of sale, it becomes money. And that money is used to control governments, either to control just governments or to use the money to control all the spheres of influence and absolutely enslave people. So basically, what has Trump done in this regard since he's come in this term? He's basically declared a national emergency, the Defense Protection Act. And he said, over the last several presidencies, we have allowed China to garner enormous amounts of natural resources, and we're dependent for rare earth, and we're dependent for pharmaceuticals and things that we should never be dependent for, because it puts us in a very vulnerable situation. So he's declaring national emergencies right and left. He's declared, or is about to declare, a national emergency in housing. Why? Because they have created a situation where the Generation Zs and the millennials can't buy a house. You just literally can't buy it. They're priced out of the market. And besides that, here's some of the collusion that they've done. They've got together with the people who normally build first-time homebuyer homes, and they're building thousands of homes that fit the profile for a first-time homebuyer, except guess what? They're not for sale. They're for rent only. So going on down, to give you another example of the way that we're vulnerable, China controls the steel market and has driven many of our steel companies out of business, thus the term the Rust Belt. They control the principal market in solar power and in wind and they control almost all of the essential elements that go into our pharmaceuticals. And basically, think about what happened in COVID when you couldn't get a phone or you couldn't get an automobile. They control a lot of the chips. I mean, we have to get into a situation where America is absolutely, completely, and utterly self-sufficient, where we don't have to depend on anybody. That's strength, strength through power, strength through resources, strength through reach. Now, to sum this up, here's what we've talked about. That all week this week, we talked about sovereign currency, sovereign borders, honest election, and resource independence. If you'll join me next week, this is what we're going to be talking about. It's just a continuation of that list of things that are absolutely essential if you're going to be what? The leader of the world. And if that leader is going to bring peace and prosperity to the world. So we'll pick it up next week and we'll be talking about energy independence, manufacturing prowess. Trump has created a situation where, depending on who you talk to, 12 to $17 trillion has been committed to build new factories in this country. And that money is coming in here. Manufacturing is leaving China faster than you can shake your head. So within a year or two, America is once again going to be the dominant manufacturing force in the world. We're going to spread that manufacturing out, but there's always going to be one nation that's number one, and that's going to be the United States. And we're going to talk about equitable trade agreements with everything that Trump has been doing with renegotiating trade agreements and with leveraging the tariffs. We're not losing money on trade anymore. We're making money. And we're also going to talk about global financial parity. Trump has stood on that podium in the White House and said multiple times, you cannot have peace if you don't have every nation in the world having relative parity financially, because the lack of that is the principal cause of war. And then we have to have shared values and goals. And when we finish this series, the next series I'm going to do to me, it's just shocking. It's basically going to show you the extent to which the global shadow elite puppet masters who control us will go to in order to see to it that we're asleep, that we're passive, that we have no idea what they're doing to control us. And so we're going to be talking about wars for profit and what they do to drive us into absolute slavery. And then if they will do the things they do to cause wars and kill millions of people, is there any question that they would do anything and everything they could to brainwash us and divide us? And the answer is absolutely yes, they will. And when you find out the things that they have done to us, it's heinous. So join us next week to finish this series, and join us the next week to go into that deep dive on how they have so successfully divided the nation, because they know exactly what the Bible says: a nation divided cannot stand. So we are on a path where we're unraveling all of the control mechanisms one by one by one. And as God showed me when I had my near-death experience, the truth will set you free. So we're at the point where God told me, I'm going to hold you in the cleft of the rock until the last minute, till people are really ready to hear the message. And then I'm going to bring you out, and you're going to talk in terms of history, because it's concrete. It can't be called a conspiracy theory. The Bible, because it's 70% history. And we're going to give you the message that you need in order to open people's eyes. So if you'll follow me, we're unraveling all the lies, all the deception, all the corruption, and you're going to come to one realization: and another nation in the world that's going to come out of this reset, the leader of the world, other than the United States of America. We are God's ordained nation to lead the world into a period, unparalleled period of peace and prosperity, and to usher in God's harvest of souls. So with that, folks, join me next week, and we'll go into the last part of this series. And then please join me the following week and see where we go with that as well. So basically, please subscribe. We're coming into probably a 90 to 120 day period where whistleblowers are going to be coming out like you can't believe. And I'm going to try to be feeding you all the information. Well, I'm not a newscaster. So what I do is I'm a strategic analyst. I sit back and I look at all kinds of things and let them build for a month, for 2 months, for 6 months, for a year, for 10 years. And then I put the puzzle pieces together so that if you follow me, what you'll get is you'll get out of the forest where you can't see what's going on, where they can confuse you and control you and brainwash you. And you'll be able to see what's going on from a 60,000 fair foot view where there's clarity, where all the pieces come together and make sense, where you get back control of your own lives and we get back control of our nation. So with that, God bless you all, and we'll see you next week.